Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode on D&D. Today we're going to be talking about taverns and tavern drinks. So, if this sounds familiar to you, let me know. You're the Dungeon Master, and your party, consisting of a few different players, but specifically the dwarf, decide to go to a tavern. The dwarf, having their dwarven resilience, is going to have advantage on every drink they down. So they order 10, and one after another, they boom, 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 slam them down. After a while, they will either fail one eventually, which, depending on how you run it, is going to knock them out, or they're going to keep drinking until the tavern is just run underground or they're kicked out. I personally think that we can spice that up a little bit, make drinks more interesting for the players and for the DM. So today I have 3 tips for you on running alcohol in your D&D games. My first tip is having drink options. Normally, when players ask for drink options, I have things like Dwarven Ale, Honey Mead, and Elvenberry Wine. Or if I feel more creative, I can go with things like Dragon's Breath and Goblin's Brew. Each of those drinks is going to be priced differently. A few coppers for a cheaper drink, maybe something more common like Honey Mead, a few silver for something a little bit more expensive, a glass of berry wine, or a few gold if they're getting a full keg or a full bottle of wine. Also, as all of those drinks will have different difficulty classes. Each DC will be set based on kind of how you run your game. I'd set typical ale as a lower save, just it's not as potent, not as strong. But for things like that are dwarven made, dwarves who have natural advantage and resilience against drinks, I would give them a higher DC just because they're more potent and stronger. So as opposed to Honey Mead, I might give it a 10 and a 10 DC, and Dwarven Ale I might give it a 12 or 13. A little change in there. Another important thing to remember another thing to remember for their pricings is where they come from and where the players currently are. If they're in a dwarven stronghold, then the dwarven ale is probably going to be the most common thing there, and thereby maybe one of the cheapest. But things like Elvenberry wine would be more expensive there. Meanwhile, in the elven high-top tree cities, the dwarven ale might be the most expensive thing because it has to be transported all the way from wherever the dwarves are in your world. And again, the pricing will vary, and it matters based on how your world is built and where the players are. That's basically it for the first tip. That is just different pricings, different DCs, and remember where the players are is going to change what type of drinks they have and what price and difficulty class they'll be. My second tip is for consecutive drinks. I say increase the save for the next drink by 1, whether they fail or save the last one that they drank. This makes it more likely to affect them based on how many drinks they've had beforehand, because realistically, the more alcohol they have in their system, the harder it is to fight it off or resist it. So let's use a common mead, for instance, that has a DC of 8. If they drink the first mead, the DC will be 8, and whether they pass or fail, if they decide to order a second one, same drink, it'll be a 9 DC, just because they've had a previous drink. And then that'll increase again. If they have a third drink, that'll be 10, fourth drink 11, fifth 12, and so on and so forth. This works even when they get different drinks. The DC can still increase depending on how many drinks they've had before. So for example, we're going back to Elvenberry wine. Let's say it has a DC of 12, and the mead has a DC of 8 again. If they drank one mead, and they went to the Elvenberry wine next, then that DC would have increased from 12 to 13 because they previously had a drink, any type of drink beforehand. Now, that can be said for any different drink, and depending on how much they've drank, you can decide if maybe they'll start getting disadvantage at a certain point. Which brings me to my third and final point for drinks in D&D. My third tip is for failed saves on drinks. I used to run it so that whenever they fail a save, they would immediately be unconscious, which pretty easy to wake up from when your friend rouses you or splashes water on you, however they choose to do so, or they leave you asleep and they don't have to deal with you. what I rule it now, so that whenever they fail a save, the first fail, the player becomes, or the PC becomes drunk or tipsy, which means in my ruling that they would have disadvantage on saving throws and ability checks for the next so long until they rest. Now you can change it so maybe they have a disadvantage on attack rolls and saving throws, or ability checks and attack rolls, or however you choose, or all three, however you choose to run it. That's all up to you. It could also depend on what they failed on. There could be drinks with negative effects for failing on this one. Meanwhile, this drink you're just going to get basically drunk. This gives it a little more. This makes it a little harder for the players, but without making it just stop right there, because they're fun. The fun of them drinking again and again, maybe in a drinking competition against someone, they're going to keep going up. And if you're using the second tip, increasing the DC each one, if they fail, they just lose the competition immediately. But this way, they still have a chance. It just makes it a lot harder for them. That just makes, these are the three tips that I have that just make the game a little bit more fun and vibrant when it comes to drinks in D&D. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have any suggestions for future videos, please leave them in the comments. If you enjoyed, please drop a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be posting hopefully once a week, maybe more depending on how my schedule is. But thanks for stopping by, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!